Hey guys, appreciate you hopping on, whether you're watching this now or you'll be watching it later. But anyway, as I spent some time this week really thinking about this passage in Psalm 23, this verse, he guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I kept circling back to really like the past 2.5 years in our adoption and all of that. And so I want to take some time tonight and just share with you a little bit about that story and a little bit about how we've seen God really show himself to us through that whole process. So anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we're going to turn it over to that. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And as I thought about that last line, he guides me in the paths of righteousness, it brought to mind everything that my family's been going through for really the past 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, we started thinking through, praying through adoption. We'd considered it for a long time, but 2.5 years ago, we felt like it was time to move forward. But we had no idea where to start or where to begin. I had a Disciple Now weekend coming up, and so I was stressed and anxious and working really hard on that. And so our plan was as soon as Disciple Now was over, we're going to figure out the next steps. We're going to decide what we're going to do. And so I remember the Friday night of Disciple Now, I was spending some time with the band, and I was talking with the worship leader. He had adopted, and I'd asked him some questions. And as I asked questions, he began to smile and said, "Are you thinking about adopting?" Of course, I said yes. And he said, "My wife, Taylor, works for an adoption agency. That's all she does. I'm going to bring you a packet tomorrow." And so Friday night, we had a conversation. Saturday, I had a packet hand delivered to me. And so come Sunday, we were on the path of adoption. We had a guide. We had an adoption agency. We knew a path. We knew where we were heading. And so he guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And so fast forward about a year later, and we've done the home study. We've done a lot of our paperwork. We've begun fundraising. We've been in the process heavily for a year, and we're waiting to be approved by the Indian government to be available to adopt a child. And so on February the 22nd, 2019, we got a call. And it was the call that we had been approved to adopt from India. But more than that, it was a call that they had reserved a file for us. There was a little boy. And so in that moment, our hearts just leaped. You know, we've been approved. And not only that, there's a child. And so we began to look at pictures and pray over this file and seek counsel and advice and start to understand what it was we were supposed to do. And the more we prayed and the more we read and the more we sought counsel, we realized that this wasn't our child. This wasn't our son. And so we said no. We said no to a child who is made in the image of God. We said no to a child who the Father loves. We said no to a child without a family and without a home. And it was one of the hardest things that we've ever had to do. But God guides us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And so for the next 5 months, that was our life. Praying and waiting, seeing a file, reading, praying, asking questions, and realizing that this wasn't the right fit, that our family couldn't meet this child's needs, and that it had to be a no. And I don't think I can begin to explain how gut-wrenching that process was. And as we got towards the end of those 5 months, we started to question, are we cut out for this? Did we know what we were signing up for? And eventually, 5 months later, we got a call. And the words that the adoption agency used were, this is a miracle file. There's no medical issues. There's nothing that stands out. We don't see files like this. And so we saw the file of a 5-month-old little boy who was severely malnourished, who was skin and bones, but who was 5 months old. And actually, he was born on February the 22nd, 2019, the very same day we'd gotten the first call, the very same day we'd been approved to adopt from India. And so we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know where all this was going to lead, but we knew that this was our son. And so we said yes. And so fast forward another 7 months, we've been staring at this picture. We've been praying for this child. We've been trying to find out all the information that we could. And 7 months later, court is done. He's officially our son, and we're waiting for his passport to be finished, and we're going to travel and go get him. And so we're in this time of waiting, and we're expecting a call. And when we get a call, we're expecting 2 to 3 weeks to get things in order, to get things set up, and to go and pick up our son. And so on Friday, or on Saturday, February the 29th, we got a call at lunch. I was midway through my Zaxby's wings and things, and we got a call that it was time to go. And not in 2 weeks, not in 3 weeks, it was time to go in 3 days. And so I'll be honest, I don't remember a bit of those 3 days. I have no idea what happened. I just know that come Tuesday, we were on a plane heading to India. And it was exciting and it was terrifying. And the truth is that because it was so rushed, because in 3 days we'd had to figure out work and childcare and travel, that I didn't really know what was happening. I knew that I had a plane ticket to get me to India. I knew that I had a hotel to stay at. But other than that, I just didn't know. I didn't know appointments. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know how I was going to get there. The only thing I knew was a name. I knew the name Alex. That's it. And so when we got to the airport in Patna and I walked out, we're just overwhelmed. There was no English. There was no people that understood. And so we were a little bit wide-eyed when we walked out of the airport into the street until we found Alex. And Alex was our guide for the next 2.5 weeks. Alex got us where we needed to go. Alex made sure we had the paperwork that we needed. Alex lined up guides. Alex lined up transportation. He lined up everything. And so every step of the way, he got us where we needed to be. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And now our time in India wasn't quite what I expected. I didn't know what to expect, but life got crazy. Meetings got rearranged, schedules got extended, and while we were there, something that I don't think anybody could have predicted happened. The coronavirus just spread. And so while we were in country, India started to close its borders and not allow in any foreigners, and the U.S. Embassy started to close down. And by the time we made it back to America, India was not really sending many foreigners back home. Things were slowing down. And so even though that was a stressful 3 days of packing up and rushing out last minute to go get our son, the truth is this: if we had waited 2 to 3 weeks like we thought, I don't know when we would have been able to travel. I don't know when we would have been able to meet our son. And so God guides us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Now, I've just given you a few examples, but the truth is over the past 2.5 years, we can see time after time where God guided us, where God made the path known, where God told us where to go. And it was a terrifying experience not having that whole path laid out at the beginning. But we learned to walk with God throughout it. Now here's what I found, though, is that as I've come home, things have begun to feel normal again. Things have begun to feel comfortable, and I've begun to feel in control. And so the truth is sometimes it feels a little harder to seek the Lord as a guide when you feel like everything's normal and we feel like you're in control. But the truth of the matter is this, is that as crazy as our adoption journey was, that's what every day is like on planet Earth for the believer. Right? There's nothing normal about what God's calling us to do. God knows our name. He's invited us into his family. He's transforming us into the image of his son. He's calling us to love our enemies. He's calling us to serve the suffering. He's calling for us to be salt and light. He's calling for us to share an eternal message of hope and joy. God's got us on a worldwide mission. He's called us to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. And there's nothing normal about any of that. There's nothing comfortable about any of that. And so the question is do we want to experience the joy that it is to walk with the Father? Do we want to be transformed by God? Do we want to be used by God? Do we want to be a part of what God's doing across this world? And I think the answer is yes, we want to be a part. And so The next question is this, are we going to allow God to guide us? If we want to be a part of what God's doing, are we going to allow God to guide us? Are we going to wake up in the morning thinking of him, being dependent on him? Are we going to look to his word to hear his voice? Are we going to cry out to him in prayer? Are we going to find ways to gather with other believers who can give us wisdom and challenge us in our faith? God wants to do something incredible in our lives, and God wants to do something incredible through our lives. And not only that, he will guide us every step of the way. Will you let God guide you? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Hey guys, I appreciate you hopping on tonight and just hearing a little bit about our story. The truth of the matter is this, is that God wants to work in our life each and every day, and so we need to seek him as our guide. And so the last thing I got tonight is there's a band called Wren Collective, and they've got a song called Lighthouse. It's an older song. I'm sure you've heard it, but it just kind of relates well to, I think, the idea of God being our guide. And so they put out basically a home worship set, and they've shared that, made that public. So anyway, I'm going to throw that video up. It's them in their living room playing Lighthouse. If you don't hang around for the song, at least hang around for the accents. They are worth it. But anyway, these are great guys. And so anyway, just use this opportunity to worship if you want to worship, to just listen to the song prayerfully. But anyway, I love you guys, miss you guys. And so anyway, I can't wait to see you guys. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. If there's anything that you need, if you've got any ideas for ways that we can connect with each other, I want to hear them. But anyway, love you guys. Hope to see you guys soon. And we're going to close out with this worship song.
Well, hello, church. We count it a great privilege to be with you, to worship with you and your church. I'm just going to read from John chapter 4, 23. Jesus said, "But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for their Father is seeking such people to worship him." You know, it came after just a moment when the Samaritan woman said, "But don't you Jews say you're meant to worship in the temple?" Jesus was saying, it doesn't matter where you worship from, it matters about the state of your heart. That's where worship comes from. That's what the Father's looking for. So today, whether you're in a living room, whether you're outside, no matter where you are, we just love the fact that we can worship together. We don't need to be in a church building. We are the church. So let's just choose to worship God despite our circumstances. You know, Jesus didn't say to worship in feelings and circumstance, but he said in spirit and in truth. So let's sing together.
My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. All right, here we go. In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. Sing of his faithfulness, my lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. You're my light and my salvation, my lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you home, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. It's the far before us. You're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us. You're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us. You're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us. You're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you, yeah. My lighthouse, yes, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore.